pada chaya shodahe amai tomara charana Priya pada chaya shodahe amai tomara charana Swami, joy dosha shodhi, joy guna. Joy bega dami, joy dosha shodhi, joy guna. Satsanga deha hai hamare boshechi sangera ashe Jai satsanga deha hai hamare boshechi sangera ashe Ekaki amar nahi paibo harinama sankirtane Ekaki amar nahi paibo harinama sankirtane Tumi kripa kari shraddha bindu diya deha Krishna nama dhane Tumi kripa kari shraddha bindu diya deha Krishna nama dhane Tumi kripa kari shraddha bindu diya deha Krishna nama dhane Krishna se tomar, Krishna dite paro tomar shakati ache. Krishna se tomar, Krishna dite paro tomar shakati Krishna se tomar, Krishna dite paro tomar shakati ache. Kripa kari amito kangal Krishna Krishna boli dhaita pache pache amito kangal Krishna Krishna boli dhaita pache Vaishnava Thakura Nara Shagara Nidashigara Vaishnava Thakura Nara Shagara Nidashigara Please read the translation. One devotee can read one verse, and then next can read another verse.
O Vishnu, be merciful to me, your servant, and purify me by the shades of the Lord's feet. Your feet I humbly fold.
By helping me control the 6 urges and purifying me of the 6 faults, bestow upon your servant the 6 good qualities. O Master, please give me the 6 kinds of holy association. I have sat down here hoping to have your company.
Alone I find I have no strength to chant the holy name of Lord Hari. I beg you, therefore, please be merciful, and with a particle of faith, give me great treasure of the holy name of Krishna.
Krishna is yours, and you can give him to me, for such is your power. This wretch is simply running behind you, crying out, Krishna, Krishna.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschataveshata. Hare Krishna. All glories to His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Today is the 30th anniversary of Srila Prabhupada's arrival in America. Let's read about this from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. Reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita from the chapter The Journey to America. Prabhupada is on the ship Jaladut, owned by the Scindia Steamship Company. The ocean voyage of 1965 was a calm one for the Jaladuta. Oh, I'm just taking notes for possible revisions to the Lilamrita because I'm finding. So it's probably not the only ocean voyage that was done in 1965. The ocean voyage of this particular ocean voyage was a calm one for the Jaladuta. The captain said that never in his entire career had he seen such a calm Atlantic crossing. Prabhupada replied that the calmness was Lord Krishna's mercy. And Mrs. Pandya, the captain's wife, asked Prabhupada to come back with them so that they might have another such crossing. Well, it was pious of the lady to accept that it was because Prabhupada was there that Krishna had arranged for the crossing to be calm, but to ask Prabhupada to come with us so that we can have a calm crossing is not really proper appreciation of the pure devotee. Govinda, Govinda. The poor lady in the forest is calling out. She dropped her big pile of sticks. Oh, Govinda! She collected the sticks with such great difficulty, put it on her head. And as it dropped down, she called out, Oh, Govinda! So Govinda came and said, What do you want? Please put the sticks back on my head. She should have replied. She should have asked, Amito Kangal Krishna Krishna Bali Dhaita Papachipana Krishna Shaitoma Krishna Dite Paro Tomara Shakati Achanas. She should have prayed, Please give me Krishna. Srila Prabhupada wrote in his diary, If the Atlantic would have shown its usual face, perhaps I would have died. But Lord Krishna has taken charge of the ship. On September the 13th, Prabhupada noted in his diary, 32nd day of journey, cooked bati khichdi. It appeared to be delicious, so I was able to take some food. Today I have disclosed my mind to my companion, Lord Sri Krishna. There is a Bengali poem made by me in this connection. This poem was a prayer to Lord Krishna, and it is filled with Prabhupada's devotional confidence in the mission that he had undertaken on behalf of his spiritual master. Now, in the book, the English translation of the first few verses is given, but we can sing the whole poem. Which begins, Krishna tava punna habe bhai. Bhagavan Shri Krishna pada padme prarthana. Shri Krishna Krishna tava punna habe bhai, ei punna karibe jabe, Radharani khushi habe, duga ati bali tomatai. Krishna tava punna habe bhai, ei punna karibe jabe, Radharani khushi habe, duga ati bali tomatai. Shri Siddhanta Saraswati, Sachi Shikha Priya Ati, Krishna Sevaya Jolanai. Shri Siddhanta Saraswati, Sachi Shikha Priya Ati, Krishna Sevaya Jolanai. Shri Mahanta Guru Jagate Madhya Yuru, Krishna Bhakti Dev Thai Thai. Guru Jagate Madhya Guru Krishna Bhakti Dev Taricha Balavan Hasyate Tirthantan Vaijate Gaurangena. Taricha Balavan Hasyate Tirthantan Vaijate Gaurangena. Pritibite Nagaradi Asamudra Nada Nadi Shakale Lai Krishna. Pritibite Nagaradi Asamudra Nada Nadi Shakale Lai Krishna. Tahale Ananda Hai Tabe Hoi Digbijay Chaitanya Kripa Atishay. Tahale Ananda Hai Tabe Hoi Digbijay Chaitanya Maya Dusha Jato Duki, Jagate Shabai Shuki, Vaishnaver Icha Purna. Maya Dusha Jato Duki, Jagate Shabai Shuki, Vaishnaver Icha Purna. Shikar Shikari Bare, Agga Jadi Gile More, Yoga Nahi Ati Dini. Tai Shaitoma Kripa Magite Chayanurupa Ajitumi Shaka Shaka Lakavi. Tai Shaitoma Kripa Magite Chayanurupa Ajitumi Shaka Lakavi. Toma She Shakti Pele Guru She Baba Shri Mile Jivan Shatak Yadiha. Toma She Shakti Pele Guru She Baba Shri Mile Jivan Shatak Yadiha. Shei Shei Shiva Pele Tahale Shukhi Hale Tava Sangha Bhagate Mila. Shei Shei Shiva Pele Tahale Evam janam nipatitam prabhava kupe kama vikama manoya prapatan prasangat kritvat masat surashena bhagavan grihita so hankatam visuje tava bhritya sevam. Vikam bhagava kupe kama vikama manoya prapatan prasangat Kritvat surashina bhagavan grihita soham katham visuje parvitya sevam. Chumi mo chiro shakti bhuliya maya lati khayachi janma janam thare. Chumi mo chiro shakti bhuliya maya lati khayachi janma janam. Ajipona ei sujog, jodi hoi jogajog, tobe paritu he militan. Ajipona ei sujog, jodi hoi jogajog, tobe paritu he militan. Tomare milane bhai, abar shri shuko pai, o charane chi ginda. Tomare milane bhai, abar Koto bane chuta chuti, bane khai luta puti, সেই দিন কবে হবে মো। Koto bane chuta chuti, bane khai luta puti, সেই দিন কবে হবে মো। আজি সেই সুবিধানে তোমার শরণ ধরে, বড় আশা তাকিলাম যায়। আজি সেই সুবিধানে তোমার আমি তবার নিত্য দাস, তাই মোরে তোয়াস, তুমি বিনা অনুগতি নাই। আমি তোমার দাস, তাই করি দাস, তুমি বিনা অনুগতি নাই। কৃষ্ণ তব্য পুণ্য হবে ভাই, কৃষ্ণ তব্য পুণ্য হবে ভাই। এই পুণ্য করবে যাবে রাধা রানী খুশি হবে, জীবনটি বলি So continuing the reading from Srila Prabhupada Lamrita. In the same straightforward, factual manner in which he had noted the date, the weather, and his state of health, he now described his helpless dependence on his companion, Lord Krishna, and his absorption in the ecstasy of separation from Krishna. He described the relationship between the spiritual master and the disciple, and he praised his own spiritual master, Sri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, by whose strong desire the holy name of Lord Gauranga was spread throughout all the countries of the Western world. He plainly stated that his spiritual master had ordered him to accomplish this mission of worldwide Krishna consciousness, and feeling unworthy, he prayed to Lord Krishna for strength. The last verses give an unexpected, confidential glimpse into Srila Prabhupada's direct relationship with Lord Krishna. Prabhupada called on Krishna as his dear friend and longed for the joy of again wandering the fields of Vraja. This memory of Krishna, he wrote, came because of a great desire to serve the Lord. Externally, Srila Prabhupada was experiencing great inconvenience. He had been aboard ship for a month and had suffered heart attacks and repeated seasickness. Moreover, even if he were to recover from these difficulties, his arrival in America would undoubtedly bring many more difficulties. But remembering the desire of his spiritual master, taking strength from his reading of Chaitanya Charitamrita, and revealing his mind in his prayer to Lord Krishna, Prabhupada remained confident. After a 35-day journey from Calcutta, the Jaladuta reached Boston's Commonwealth Pier at 5:30 a.m. on September the 17th, 1965. What's the date today? So they recalculated according to the Tithi, or calculating the corresponding lunar day. The ship was to stop briefly in Boston before proceeding to New York City. Among the first things Srila Prabhupada saw in America were the letters A and P painted on a pierfront warehouse. The grey waterfront dawn revealed the ships in the harbour, a conglomeration of lobster stands and drab buildings, and rising in the distance, the Boston skyline. Prabhupada had to pass through US Immigration and Customs in Boston. His visa allowed him a 3-month stay, and an official stamped it to indicate his expected date of departure. Captain Pandya invited Prabhupada to take a walk into Boston, where the captain intended to do some shopping. They walked across a footbridge into a busy commercial area with old churches, warehouses, office buildings, bars, tawdry bookshops, nightclubs, and restaurants. Prabhupada briefly observed the city, but the most significant thing about his short stay in Boston, aside from the fact that he had now set foot in America, was that at Commonwealth Pier he wrote another Bengali poem entitled Markine Bhagavat Dharma, which is translated here as Teaching Krishna Consciousness. It actually means Krishna Consciousness in America. So, some of the verses he wrote on board the ship that day are as follows, but we can read the whole thing. We can read and change. We only know of, 6 poems that Prabhupada wrote. 3 in English and 3 in Bengali, and 2 of them, there may have been more, but the others are not extant, if there are any more. So 2 of them were written, 17th, and this was, 2 of them were written within. One was written on September the 13th, and next on September the 17th, 1965. So let's change this. Markine Bhagavat Dharma, Krishna Consciousness in America. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. If you permit me, I'll go and help Narayana.
Yes. Did you offer such nice obeisances to Prabhupada? Please do. Baro Kripa Koile Krishna Adhyamara Prati Kilagia Nileka Karo Ebe Gati Baro Kripa Koile Krishna Adhyamara Prati Kilagia Raja Taba E Anumane Nahe Kendo Ani Bene Ugrasthane Raja Taba E Anumane Shobayachana Vasudeva Katha Ruchi Maheshe Prashana Jabe Jadi Prabha Kripa Hoy Ahoy Tuki Shokale Shambhavai Tumi Sheko Tuki Jabe Jadi Prabha Kripa Hoy Ahoy Tuki Shokale Shambhavai Jale Tara Bhuje Sheiras Eto Kripa Karo Prabhu Kari Nijabar Jale Tara Bhuje too fast. Try to follow the same speed. Tomari chai shambhai maya bosh. Tomari chai nasha maya rapara. তাই ইচ্ছা হয় যদি তাদের উদ্ধার বুঝিবে নিশ্চয় তবে কথা সে তোমার Khata Chitava Avatar Gira Hoya Shune Jadi Kane Barba Shindvatam Sokata Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtanaha Vidyantasto Hya Bhadrani Vidhu Noti Suhrit Sadam Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavad Chitam Ashloke Bhakti Bhagati Naishtiti Rajassamo Bhava Kamalo Bhadayaschaye Eta Etarana Vidham Stitam Satya Prasidati Eta Etarana Vidham Stitam Satya Prasidati Evam Hisamna Manaso Bhagavad Bhakti Yogataha Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam Nitya Sangasya Jayate Vidyate Hridya Grantish Chityante Sarva Samshaya Shiyante Chatsya Karmani Drishta Evatmanishvare Sate Paive Nishta Yolayera Bhadra Shad Kuchi Vitaha Rajasta Mohate Tabe Paive Nishta Yolayera Bhadra Sate Kuchi Vitaha Ki kare bhujabo khatar Bhorshe chahe Khudra ami dini Kono shakti nahe Ki kare bhujabo khatar Bhorshe chahe Khudra ami dini Kono shakti nahe Atha chene choprabhu khatha bolibare Shri tomar ichha prabhu karo ebare Atha chene choprabhu khatha bolibare Shri tomar ichha prabhu karo ebare Akhila jagat guru bachan se tomar Alankata kariba hamata tomar Akhila jagat guru bachan se tomar Alankata kariba hamata tomar Tava kripa hale mor Mata shuddha habe Shuniya shobha shuka Shuniya shobha shuka dukha jiguchive Tava kripa hale mor Mata shuddha habe Shuniya shobha shuka dukha jiguchive Ami acho jadi prabhu amare nachate Nachao nachao prabhu nachao shei mate Nacha jadi prabhu amare nachate Nachao nachao prabhu nachao shei mate Ashte puto gata nachao shei mate Bhakti nai ved nai name kumbaro Bhakti vedanta nam Videsha chakaro Bhakti nai vedanai name kumbaro Bhakti vedanta nam Videsha chakaro
My dear Lord Krishna, you are so kind upon this useless soul, but I do not know why you have brought me here. Now you can do whatever you like with me.
But I guess you have some business here. Otherwise, why would you bring me to this terrible place?
Most of the population here is covered by the material modes of ignorance and passion. Absorbed in the material life, they think themselves very happy and satisfied, and therefore they have no taste for the transcendental message of Vasudeva. I do not know how they will be able to understand it.
But I know your countless work we can make everything possible because you are the most expert mystics.
How will they understand the mellows of devotional service? Oh Lord, I am simply praying for your mercy so that I will be able to convince them about your message.
All living entities have become under the control of the illusory energy by your will. Therefore, if you like, by your will, they can also be released from the clutches of illusion.
I wish that you may deliver them. Therefore, if you so desire their deliverance, then only will they be able to understand your message.
Any ladies like to read?
He will become liberated from the influence of the modes of ignorance and passion, and thus all inauspicious things accumulated in the core of the heart will disappear.
How will I make them understand this message of Krishna consciousness? I am very unfortunate, unqualified, and the most fallen. Therefore, I am seeking your benediction so that I can convince them, for I am powerless to do so on my own. Somehow or other, O Lord, you have brought me here to receive the body. Now, my Lord, it is up to you to make me the success of failure has been done. O spiritual master of all the world, I can simply repeat your message. So, if you like, you can make my power of speaking suitable for their understanding.
Only by your countless mercy will my words become pure. I am sure that when this transcendental message penetrates their hearts, they will certainly feel engladdened and thus become liberated from all unhappy conditions of their life.
Oh Lord, I am just like a puppet in your hand. So if you have brought me with a plan, then make me dance. Oh Lord, make me dance as you will.
I have no devotion, nor do I have any knowledge, but I ask strong faith in the holy name of Krishna. I have been designated as Bhakti Vedanta, and now in life you can fulfill the real purport of Bhakti Vedanta.
Signed, the most unfortunate, insignificant beggar, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, on board the ship Jaladuta, Commonwealth Pier, Boston, Massachusetts, USA, dated 18th of September 1965. So, he wrote that one day after arriving? He says he wrote on the 17th. Or maybe he stayed 2 days. Prabhupada was now in America. He was in a major American city, rich with billions, populated with millions, and determined to stay the way it was. Prabhupada saw Boston from the viewpoint of a pure devotee of Krishna. E Ugrasthane, this terrible place you brought me to. Most people coming to America think, how wonderful, at last I reached America. Now all my dreams of sense gratification will be fulfilled. Prabhupada immediately saw E Ugrasthane. He said that in the dawn, Prabhupada must have been able to see the skyline, which in India there was no, I think in Bombay, at Nariman Point there was, in Bombay, some small high rise. I don't know if that early, 65 it was there, probably not, huh? Must have come later. I mean, even in the mid-70s when I first came, there was some low high rise or something like that compared to America, but nothing like in America. So it must have been something which any immigrant, actually in other countries of the world, they nowhere but America had these high buildings in that, except at that time. So it's very impressive when you first come. But Prabhupada's immediately comment, Ugrasthane, terrible place. Prabhupada saw Boston from the viewpoint of a pure devotee of Krishna. He saw the hellish city life, people dedicated to the illusion of material happiness. All his dedication and training moved him to give these people the transcendental knowledge and saving grace of Krishna consciousness. Yet he was feeling weak, lowly, and unable to help them on his own. He was but, in his own words, an insignificant beggar. In other words, he considered himself like this, with no money. He had barely survived the 2 heart attacks at sea. He spoke a different language. He dressed strangely, yet he had come to tell people to give up meat eating, illicit sex, intoxication, and gambling, and to teach them to worship Lord Krishna, who to them was a mythical Hindu god. Well, I'd like to make more comment that most of the people never heard of Krishna, and Krishna wasn't then to them, if at all anyone had heard of Krishna at all, they considered him a mythical Hindu god, but the vast population never heard of Krishna, never heard the word, had no idea. What would he be able to accomplish? Helplessly, he spoke his heart directly to God. I wish that you may deliver them. I am seeking your benediction so that I can convince them. And for convincing them, he would trust in the power of God's holy name and in the Srimad Bhagavatam. This transcendental sound would clean away desire for material enjoyment from their hearts and awaken loving service to Krishna. On the streets of Boston, Prabhupada was aware of the power of ignorance and passion that dominated the city. But he had faith in the transcendental process. He was tiny, but God was infinite, and God was Krishna, his dear friend. Very wonderful insights being offered here. The city that was determined to stay the way it was. That Prabhupada recognized himself as tiny and the power of the material energy, but he had Krishna, his very dear friend, to help him. In this book, Jai Srila Prabhupada, I wrote an essay. I featured an essay called On Srila Prabhupada's Coming to the West. So I suggest we could read this out also. Would you like to read? Paragraph by paragraph. And then I can start to edit my own writing also. So, there are plenty of copies here. This is on page 87.
Devotees of Lord Krishna take pleasure in recounting his wonderful pastimes.
Can everyone hear? No, you're okay. Okay.
Those pastimes purify the heart, attract the mind, and give solace to devotees suffering in separation from their beloved Lord. Because Krishna's pastimes are of the spiritual nature, they can be told again and again and constantly remembered without becoming stale. Indeed, the more they are relished, the more they become fresh. The pastimes of the Lord's pure devotees are of the same quality, and just as some devotees, according to their taste, take special pleasure in certain pastimes of the Lord, so the various pastimes of the pure devotees of the Lord, such as Srila Prabhupada, are variously relished by his followers.
I am simply fascinated by Prabhupada's having come to America. The bringing of Krishna consciousness to the West is probably the most amazing, unlikely and glorious event in the history of the world. For so many long years, the West has developed a civilization based on ignorance, sin and suffering. Then for the first time in its history, Srila Prabhupada brought real and complete knowledge to the West. So-called Vedantists and yogis have come before him with Indianized editions of the same illusion which was afflicting the West. They had simply brought sense gratification in another guise. But at last Srila Prabhupada brought the real thing, the nectar we were hankering for.
Now, since the passing of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the idea of preaching in the West had all but been forgotten. However, Lord Chaitanya was constantly thinking about it, and all the previous acharyas were thinking about it. They anxiously thought, when will the day come when Mahaprabhu's prophecy will be fulfilled? How long will the world suffer without Lord Chaitanya's Prema Sankirtan? Then Prabhupada ventured forth, carrying the order of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the blessing of the acharyas as his baggage. Such boldness, such courage, such adventurous spirit, such lack of concern for personal well-being, such determination, such compassion, such fearlessness, and such faith in the protection of Krishna. Prabhupada, having come alone and unaccompanied, demonstrated his mode of self-reliance, his get on with the job spirit, and his being in a class distinct from others.
Even if Srila Prabhupada had been unsuccessful, his coming shows that he was in a different mood than many of the thousands of other Vaishnavas in India. All of us were going to hell, but it didn't seem to matter to anyone else. Most Vaishnavas were content with eating, sleeping, performing their own sadhana, and perhaps giving a few speeches here and there. But Prabhupada's heart was tortured with compassion. He begged his god brothers to help him, but despite their having institutions, prestige, followers and knowledge, none of them dared or cared to help. So Bhaktivedanta Swami waited no longer for any of them to make a move, but made his own institute. He was not the head of an institution. He had no support, manpower or money. No one cared whether he lived or died. But I have to try anyway. My spiritual master has ordered.
Even Lord Chaitanya expressed his inability to spread the Sankirtana alone. Even he, the Supreme Lord himself, had assistance. Sango, Pan, Ratra, Padsadam. But Prabhupada had none. Hence his going alone to the cold, unknown shores of the West is the most courageous act in the history of Vaishnavism. He demonstrates his complete fearlessness and faith in the protection of Krishna.
When Srila Prabhupada got on that ship, no one took him seriously. They questioned, what will you do? An old man do in America? I will make the Americans chant Hare Krishna and dance in ecstasy. Impossible. Even the Indians are not interested, so how will the Americans be?
And Prabhupada later said that what he had accomplished far exceeded his expectations. But as he wrote on Boston Fields, Sakala Sambhava Hoi Tuli. By your mercy, Krishna, everything is possible. No one cared for him, but Prabhupada cared for everyone. Otherwise, why would he attempt the impossible? He did not even care that no one cared for him. He knew that Krishna cared for him and he wanted everyone to care for Krishna.
While crossing the ocean, Srila Prabhupada brought Sri Chaitanya Amrita and preached to the crew. Then came 2 heart attacks, but Krishna came in a dream and said, "Don't worry, I am rowing your boat." Prabhupada also wrote poems talking to Krishna. Then he landed and his American adventures began.
Oh, my dear spiritual master, thank you so much for having taken the trouble to come to save us. How can we ever forget the kindness of others? Like that you would should have lost an hour where it just happened to happen. And elderly Swami on board. A little unusual perhaps, but it's not news to anyone except Prabhupada and Lord. To ascend the politeness of hosting him for a few minutes. Stepping ashore and old Leonard Pillari Sadhu, dressed in saffron colored clothes, humbly enters Amidipa, came like an angel. The world would never be the same again.
Any ladies like to read?
Where were all of us then? I was an 8-year-old kid with no idea about anything. Prabhupada's followers were scattered all over the world with not even the slightest idea of the great fortune which would soon cosmically fill up their empty lives. And many who have now dedicated their lives to that humble sadhu were not yet born.
With minus successful, and the souls and bodies sadhu, complete children of the Swami, walked among the children, figures, tear down, lying wrong, while each generation on the streets of New York, Road, and Paris. Prabhupada went among the first streets and cities, refugees from Gospel, deep from civilization, and presented the absolute truth to the society of Gospel. His contemporaries were the lovers and the spirits, righteous and the happy of the body and the sun, would not be shocked. They would have had nothing to do with these journeys, till their men and their child, and especially. But here really is, Bhakti without something to start, down on his feet, sitting at both possibilities, confident with his changing to their meditation, giving the change all the spirits of evolution that everybody could better. None of his godbrothers could have tolerated the hardship which Srila Prabhupada underwent. He so tolerantly lived with and even served the Western literature, who out of ignorance constantly did things guaranteed to disturb any cultured Vaishnava, devoid of refinement or any idea of Krishna consciousness, other than the rudiments which they were gradually learning by Srila Prabhupada, so patiently teaching them. They nevertheless had faith in it. And Prabhupada had faith in the process of Krishna consciousness. Dina Hina Jata Chilo Hariname Vidarivo. Even the most fallen will be saved by the holy name. Therefore he tolerated their uncouth behavior. He did not see American malachas. He saw Jiva, servants of Krishna. He did not reject his followers for weakness or foolishness born of immaturity. Prabhupada demonstrated the efficiency of Bhakti Yoga
Efficacy
of Bhakti Yoga in circumstances more adverse than any previous preachers of Bhakti had ever faced. He had patience, extreme tolerance, born of deep compassion for the fallen soul, and faith in the power of the Holy Name.
Srila Prabhupada found something vital and real amidst the madness of city life. Permeating the confusion was a spiritual search, a dissatisfaction with the status quo, an endeavor for the mystical, for the truth beyond the humdrum. The hippies had been through it all: drugs, booze, free sex, music, and meditation. But Krishna consciousness was something else, brought by a person who seemed as if from another planet, from an unimagined place of existence that revealed their attempts at consciousness, expansion to be puerile and insignificant.
Like most other people, the hippies were not intellectually bad, but misguided. They had seen through the emptiness of state life and were looking for something better. Lacking proper guidance, they had turned down the blind idea of gross sense satisfaction. But for all the newness and punishment they had already rejected. Swamiji, however, had something to do, and he surely was not ashamed. The wicked tried on being prepared, but Prabhupada outdid them all them. He had sharing simplicity, color, joy, and love, all essential elements of a deep consciousness, but he also brought substance, direction, knowledge, and purity. He had Krishna, and he had music. Prabhupada was all about music. Music was the sacred music, middle and the end of his life. From the internationally famous talent to the street talent, music was an expression of need, of struggle of lust, frustration, feeling, hope, and love, and longing. Music was both a message and a question, a quest for understanding, and a key to be understood.
Swamiji's music was new. No one had ever played stuff like that. Every note, every word was magical. An intense mystical outpouring of vital human life. Man, is this hippie? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare
Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Simple rhythm, simple tune, again and again, over and over. Half an hour, 1 hour, more, Swami style. Trance dance. This transcendental sound vibration is imported from the spiritual world. Far out. What does it do to you?
Sometimes the devotees faint, sometimes they roll on the ground, and sometimes they shiver in ecstasy while chanting the holy names. Chanting and chanting, they give up their material bodies and go to the spiritual land of Praja, where talking is singing, walking is dancing, and everyone's heart is stolen by a beautiful blackish cowgirl boy. Glancing mischievously at the gopis, he fills up the holes of his flute with nectarian sounds that stun all living beings within the 3 worlds. Through music and diligent concern, Srila Prabhupada did what everyone else had given up on. He reached the hearts of the hippies and gave them direction. Prabhupada was serious, and the more intelligent amongst the hippies gradually realized that he wanted them to follow him and also became serious about Krishna consciousness. Still, no one had any idea as to exactly how serious Prabhupada really was. No one understood why he incorporated the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. What was all that about when Krishna consciousness was just a rental storefront on the Lower East Side?
Brahmananda and company were shocked when Srila Prabhupada left for San Francisco. But Prabhupada had big plans. His magic worked again in San Francisco, and gradually it started working all over the world. Prabhupada spread his charm by sending his disciples here and there. They were young boys and girls dropped out from everything, saved by Prabhupada from voluntary drug-induced brain destruction. They didn't know much about Krishna consciousness or about anything, but now they were different, no longer hippies but happies. Srila Prabhupada had inspired a faith in them that made the Krishna magic work even without his personal presence. And by that faith, his disciples brought Guru and Krishna with them. Prabhupada was proud of his householder disciples who succeeded in London, where his sannyasi godmothers had failed. Indeed, his householders, fresh out of hippie life, with no background of Indian cultural life, and who were certainly not learned Vedic scholars, had started London with the Krishna chant.
So the story unfolded. Srila Prabhupada strode across the globe, and like a great general went here and there to spread the Krishna message. It is a great story whose chapters are still being written, and in the future people will look back on this moment years of his song and think, oh, how I wish I could have been there then. How exciting it must have been. All of Prabhupada's activities were amazing. At those first days in America held a special sweetness and significance. None of us knows how intense was the struggle or how severe were the difficulties that Srila Prabhupada underwent for establishing the Krishna conscious movement in the West. But Prabhupada knows, the Guru Maharaj knows, and Krishna knows. Let us all remember Srila Prabhupada's pastimes and thus become purified and happy. I especially pray that Srila Prabhupada's Leela coming to the West be ever manifest in my heart.
Let me remember his sacrifice so that I may not become selfish. Let me remember his tolerance that I may become tolerant. All glory to Srila Prabhupada coming to the West. All glory to your divine lotus feet, Srila Prabhupada. Please keep a place for me there always.
Jai Srila Prabhupada. Anyone like to make any comments? Any realizations about this? Oh, right. Okay, sorry. These are extracts from conversations. The devotees are asking Prabhupada about his coming to the West.
Srila Prabhupada, why has it taken so long for a pure devotee to come to the West? Has the West been so sinful that no pure devotee has come before your divine grace? Srila Prabhupada laughs. Don't be sorry. At that time you were so sinful that you could not receive a pure devotee.
Well, Srila Prabhupada, would you please explain why Krishna consciousness hasn't come to the West until now? Why it hasn't come earlier, Srila Prabhupada? Because you were not born. After your birth, we have come here to take you back home, back to Godhead. Now you take the opportunity. Come with us. We are waiting for your birth.
Why did Srila Prabhupada come to the West? Prabhupada, it is my duty as future master of order.
There's more? That's what follows after that.
Summer of 1986, I was alone, a tiny soul,
This is... Yeah, okay, yeah, that comes.
in saffron clothes, in the grimy streets of central London. Suddenly I thought, what if I had to come here by myself? What if there were no temple, no devotees, and no worldwide movement? What if I were the only one who knew about Krishna and had to preach simultaneously? Could I do anything? I pondered the possibilities for a second before being slammed with the reality. No. I continued to walk the cold, uncaring streets. My heart marveled in newfound appreciation of Srila Prabhupada.
So, anyone else have any realizations about that? 1965. I was saying 30 years. My arithmetic's not very good. 40 years. How many of you were not born in the present bodies that you are trapped in at that time? Most. Where were you? Waiting to come to receive Prabhupada's mercy. Any other thoughts? Yeah, please. What will happen in the next 40 years? Well, that's up to you. What are you going to do? Prabhupada often said that he would often quote Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Bharata bhumite hoilo manusya janmaja janma shartha kari karo para upaka. Those who are born in India with human birth, it is their duty to make their life successful. That means by Krishna consciousness. And to perform welfare activities for others. That means to preach Krishna consciousness. So quoting this, Prabhupada often said that that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave this order to all Indians. I am only one Indian, and see what has been done. If all Indians had taken it up so seriously, then how much the world could have been benefited. So it's up to you. What are you going to do? Srila Prabhupada has given us, Prabhupada said, I have given the framework. Now you have to fill it in. So Prabhupada gave us this movement with its temples, farms, schools. He set up the basic programs. Gave us books and told us to develop it. So it's up to us to do that.
Say one thing about this particular poem we read. Srila Prabhupada says, by his strong desire, the holy name of Lord Gauranga will spread throughout all the countries of the Western world. In all the cities, towns and villages on the earth, from all the oceans, seas, rivers and streams, everyone will chant the holy name of Krishna. So it's very inspiring to see Prabhupada has written this before he accomplished his mission.
Mm.
It's conceivable if he wrote it afterwards, but it's the fact
Yeah.
that he wrote it before. So
Well, he had faith in the words of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Prithivite ache jatanagaradigram sabata prachahoibe morana. Years later, there's some wonderful story. There's one city, Cuttack, in Orissa. It's now the second biggest city in Orissa. So one time, must have been, I suppose shortly after Prabhupada's disappearance, one of Prabhupada's disciples, who was actually sent by Prabhupada to preach, to establish the center in Bhubaneswar, which is close to Cuttack. So he was walking in the streets. So he was a very tall American sadhu, and you don't see people that tall in Orissa. They're usually quite short people. And you don't often see white-skinned people. Nowadays you do, in Puri especially, but at that time hardly. And no one had ever seen, not much heard of, that there would be white-bodied sadhu. Sadhu means Indian. Or maybe it was, I'm not sure when this was. Anyway, it must have been, he was sent there about 76. I went there in 79 and saw him. Anyway, he was there. And anyway, let's begin at the beginning. Alright, let's go back to the 1940s, where Prabhupada had his house in Calcutta, and he rented part of the house to his dear and respected godbrother, Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj. And they would often, Prabhupada was doing his business, he wasn't in Calcutta so much. He would come and go, but he would associate with his godbrother and with his godbrother's disciples, and they would have so many discussions about Shastra. And one time the question came up that this verse is there in Chaitanya Bhagavat, Priti Vite Ache Jata Nagaradigram Sabata Prachahoibe Moranam, that Krishna consciousness will be preached in every town and village of the world. So, to all readers of this, it seemed like some kind of poetic language. They thought that, well, throughout the world maybe means it's poetically stated, it means throughout Bengal. We can laugh now, but if we're in that situation, we would have probably considered in the same way. Or maybe at the most throughout India, they might have thought like that. Because viewed from a, sociological viewpoint, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement was a subsect of Vaishnavism that was only known in Bengal, Orissa, Assam, Manipur, and at that time, Bengal, East Pakistan also. And to a small extent, in Vrindavan also, and then the little bit in Punjab, the Radharaman Goswamis would preach on the Punjab side. They had some disciples. So it wasn't very widely known. And even the Bhaktivinoda Thakur had revived the pure devotional movement which had been lost for some time. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur took the mission of Bhaktivinoda Thakur and spread it very strongly. But then shortly after his disappearance, the whole thing imploded. And the Gauriya Math, which was very powerfully preaching Krishna consciousness in the presence of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati its work became to a large extent lost in fratricidal war, practically. And so Sridhar Maharaj, who was one of the most respected followers of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, by his own choice, was just leading a quiet life. He had a rented building with a few followers, and they would have their own satsang like that, and there wasn't much preaching or any no real plan for changing the world or any such things. Sometimes Abhay Charan Prabhu, his godbrother, would say, "Come on, let's go and meet Nehru. Let's preach to him." He'd say to him, but Sridhar Maharaj was more withdrawn. So one time the question came up in the middle of their scriptural discussions. This question came up: Prithivite ache jota nagar adigram sabata prachar hoy vimana. And he said that they were discussing, how is this possible? Does it really mean that Krishna consciousness will be spread to every town and village in the world? They were discussing that, well, if it is to be possible, it would require some greatly empowered personality. Who could do that? So Abhay Babu, who was present there at the time, said that some fool will do it. Not any of you, he said. And one person who was there at the time, young boy, he was studying Sanskrit actually. There were several young boys there studying Sanskrit, and he was also devotee. And so later, after studying Sanskrit, he went back home to Cuttack in Orissa, and he took up a teaching post, and eventually he became the most respected Sanskrit professor in Orissa, in all of Orissa. Dola Govinda Shastri. So we're going from the mid-1940s, we're jumping ahead here to the maybe late 1970s, where he sees some big white figure walking in the streets of Cuttack in saffron cloth with Gauriya Vaishnav tilak. And he comes up to him and said, "Who are you? What is this? You look like a Vaishnav." He said, "What is this?" And he explained that, well, actually he's from America. His Krishna consciousness is spread all over, so many centers all over the world. And he showed him the magazine Back to Godhead, with all the different centers listed: Australia, Japan, Nairobi, Prithivite Ache Jota Nagar Adigram. And this Dola Govinda Shastri was thinking, what happened? How is this possible? It was very nice. He was amazed. He saw one sadhu, and then he understood there are so many all over the world. So they were going through the magazine, and then they flipped back to because the addresses are given at the back, so they were flipping back, and they came to the front page. Inside front page, he saw the picture. And he recognized, and then he remembered, then he never thought of that, and then that flashed into his mind. That he immediately recognized, and he saw the name written. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And he saw, Abhay Bhav. Then he remembered. Who could do that? Some fool, not any of you. So that's one wonderful story. There's so many wonderful stories. Any one person coming to Krishna consciousness is a wonderful story. What to speak of thousands and millions who are coming and will come and continue to come through Srila Prabhupada's endeavor, through his books. So what will happen in the next 40 years? Well, that's up to you. You have to distribute Prabhupada's books. These books are making devotees. And if you want to be a devotee, then you have to read Prabhupada's books. It's not just put on some tilak. Even put on tilak, chant Hare Krishna, be a vegetarian. That's not all in all. We have to understand Prabhupada, what he gave us. Prabhupada said, if you want to know me, read my books. So if you want to know Prabhupada, you have to read his books. Siddhanta balaya chitte nakaraha alash. Chitte nakaraha alash. Eha lagi. What is that? How did I forget? Siddhanta balaya chitte nakaraha alash. Eha hoite Krishna lage sudrida manosh. That one should not be lazy in the matter of understanding the philosophical conclusions. For by doing so, one's mind becomes strengthened in Krishna consciousness. So, please try to understand as Prabhupada has taught us. If we don't understand as Prabhupada has taught us, then ipso facto, by that fact, we must misunderstand. And if we misunderstand, then we won't be able to serve Krishna. Just like cooking, you're cooking for Krishna, but if you don't know who Krishna is, then how will you cook for him? If you misconceive Krishna, then that will not be offerable to Krishna. As Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, that we are worshipping Krishna, not the historian's concept of Krishna, not the empiricist's Krishna, not the Prakrita Sahajiya's Krishna, not the iconoclast's Krishna, not the impersonalist Krishna. We're not even worshipping the Krishna worshipped by Vallabhacharya, nor even the Radha Krishna worshipped by Nimbarka. But we are worshipping Rupa Goswami's Radha Govinda. So we should know what Prabhupada came to give, how he gave it to us, and follow this path. Hare Krishna. Any question, comment, anything?
Translation in Tamil. My wife read in Tamil. She was crying.
Yeah, we should cry. If we don't cry, there's something wrong. Please say.
When Prabhupada came to us and the first few beings of first came to Prabhupada. Prabhupada was on the street. He walked out of one apartment.
He had to, because the person there he was afraid he was going to kill him. He was in a drug-induced madness. Many people became devotees by reading that, actually. They could appreciate that this is someone real. It's not just some tinsel Swami who's making a show of being spiritual to cheat others. In 1975, I think it must have been, shortly after I was allowed in the door of this movement, the volumes of Chaitanya Charitamrita were being published. Or they came out, actually, all at one time. Prabhupada pushed the preaching or the publishing of these volumes very quickly. He said, you publish 18 books in 2 months. And the BBT manager said, impossible. Prabhupada said, impossible is a word in a fool's dictionary. So they did it. So all the books came at once. And then when they came to England, where I was at that time, all the most senior devotees got the chance to read them. Only one copy came, so the most senior would read one, and then the next volume he had one day, and then the next volume would go to the... So you'd see all the devotees just hide away for the day to read the book. So one of my godbrothers, I saw him in the evening, and I could see he was crying. I asked, why are you crying? He said, I'm reading Chaitanya Charitamrita. If you read Chaitanya Charitamrita and you don't cry, then you're not a devotee. You had a question, Mata Prabhu?
I was trying to find the quote somewhere. Especially the fourth canto, Srila Prabhupada says that Krishna within the heart of people reciprocates the desire of the devotee. The devotee desires for a person to become devotee. So it's not like sometimes we have attitude, Lord Chaitanya's desire, it's going to happen, but you have to do it.
Yeah. Did you all hear that? It's an important comment. In the fourth canto, maybe in Puranjan section or something. Yeah, there's a quote in which Prabhupada states that Lord Krishna, situated in the heart of the conditioned soul, prompts him to become Krishna conscious due to the desire of the devotees who are preaching Krishna consciousness that they should take to Krishna consciousness. So we shouldn't just think that we'll lie down here and sleep all day and night and Krishna consciousness will automatically spread because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said so. But it's up to us to take part in it. If we don't do, then Krishna consciousness will still spread, but it may take more time, or maybe not to the same extent.
Very little I have read. I came across one devotee asking Prabhupada, when I distribute books, how do I know this person will take it? How do I know if this person will ever come to Krishna consciousness? How is it possible for me? And Prabhupada's answer was, you don't decide. You just go offer him and forget about the result. Leave it up to Krishna.
I haven't heard exactly this anecdote, but it parallels things that Prabhupada has said. That it is our duty to preach, and whether or not people take it up, that is up to them. But it is our duty to at least state the message.
Science of self-discovery.
Maybe,
Recently I read a book where preaching was in Israel.
That wasn't my book, someone else's book. Dhanavir Maharaj, I think, used to know that.
So,
preaching among the Druze, is it?
Yeah, Druze, Christians and Muslims. So a lot of preaching was that. So I was amazed because I never thought it was very good preaching that many people are.
Well, to tell you the truth, I'm amazed that so much is going on in India, because when I went there to locate in 1977, it was quite different to now. People were not nearly as respectful, and as soon as you open your mouth to start speaking about Krishna's Supreme Personality of Godhead, to be met with so many protests. Probably everyone was completely Mayavadi. It was very difficult, actually. Some people appreciate it, but in a very sentimental kind of way. Not many Indian people were taking up Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada was lamenting that why in India we just have a few people coming from the poorer classes coming to join us, but he said, why aren't the intelligent people taking this up? At that time very few were coming. They were more interested in material development. So many things we used to hear that what is the use? This was promoted by Nehru and company. That religion has spoiled India. India has had too much religion. Now we need economic development. So that's the way people were thinking.
So in this statement, oh dear friend, in your company I will experience great joy once again. Is Prabhupada revealing that he came down from Goloka?
It would appear so.